The last topic I want to cover is the end of this Kavanaugh confirmation. Now, this ordeal, this whole confirmation circus came to a dramatic end at the end of this last week. They have voted him in. They have sworn him in. It was a close 50 to 48 vote in the Senate. There were a couple of swing votes that changed their mind at the last minute. So, of course, Jeff Flake voted yes. He's the one who originally called for the FBI to prolong this another week and investigate. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska did not vote for Kavanaugh. She didn't vote against him either. She actually abstained her vote. She pulled it out last minute. A Democrat, Manchin of West Virginia, voted yes. And he did this largely because he's in a very competitive area where there are a lot of Republican competitors who are coming against him in the coming election season. And many of the polls show that West Virginia as a whole were very pro-Kavanaugh. So he voted yes. And I think the woman of the moment, the person who I think earns the most accolades on this, is Susan Collins of Maine, who voted yes and gave an incredible speech about it. She basically reviewed the whole litany of charges against Kavanaugh from A to Z. She went over all the flaws with his character. She went over all the flaws supposedly inherent in his judicial philosophy. She went over and she even talked about Alexander Hamilton and the Federalist Papers. She talked about maintaining the innocent until proven guilty standard. She talked about not wanting to be intimidated. I mean, her office received nearly 3,000 coat hangers from leftist activists. Now, this is obviously a reference to coat hanger abortions, and it was essentially a reference to the fact that by voting for Kavanaugh, Collins was sanctioning the end of Roe v. Wade. One source, the Women's March organization on Twitter, even posted a huge tweet saying how she was a rape apologist for voting for Kavanaugh. But this is not even close to the truth on this. She came out, and I think she did the right thing, ultimately. She upheld the standard of innocent until proven guilty. She wasn't intimidated. And here's the real irony of this whole thing. You know, there are a lot of feminists who came out and were very anti-Susan Collins, saying how they were going to really work to get her thrown out of Congress now that she voted against them on this, saying she betrayed women, she's, a rape apologist, so on and so forth. Well, think about it. Here you have a woman, an individual, who's basically coming to a conclusion on her own judgment based on the evidence, people she's talked to, details she's read about his cases. She went very thoroughly through all of his cases and even explained in her speech, his ties to precedent and what he thought about things like Marbury versus Madison and Brown versus Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson. All these landmark Supreme Court cases. She did her homework. She did her homework on all of his jurisprudence, and she came to a conclusion that was different from them. And here we have a bunch of feminists saying, throw her out. I mean, isn't this the kind of woman that any feminist should be celebrating? A woman who basically came to her own conclusion and was strong in the face of protesters, intimidation. I mean, the fact that she didn't buckle under this call to be a gender tribalist is somehow a bad thing. I think that it's a complete hypocrisy, and I think it really shows you that feminism today isn't about women. I mean, if it was, then feminists would, heap praise on Ayn Rand. What about someone like Ann Coulter or Sarah Palin? Look at what they do to these people in public, whether they're libertarian women, conservative women. If they don't toe the party line and agree with the feminist tribe on a particular issue, well, they don't count as real women, I guess. So it just kind of shows you the real mentality of the left. And this is really what I want to talk about on this point. I think this should be taken as a bit of a post-mortem on this whole Kavanaugh confirmation circus, because I think it really shows you a couple things. So for one thing, I predict, and I'm not the only one who feels this way, but I think that this is true, these midterm elections are going to be fierce, it's going to be ugly, it's going to get uglier. This is just the beginning. I've seen polls that say in July, something like 68% of likely Republican voters said they were likely to vote in the midterm elections. That number, from more recent poll at the end of October or at the end of September jumped to like something like 82%. We're talking about a really galvanized Republican right wing, and the left has also been galvanized into action. There's a so-called blue wave that's supposedly on the way. But I mean, I'm looking at the polls now, and it was believed the Democrats were going to be winning by like 14-point margins, and now it shows like a 7-point margin. So I'm anticipating high turnouts in midterm elections. I'm anticipating really high-profile races being televised, lots of national reaction, and I think that even though I'm clearly a little bit more on the right than I am on the left, I'm not a conservative. I don't consider myself really a Republican, even though these days, I'm embarrassed to even say I would even call myself a Democrat. It would never happen, just based on what they are now. But I think this has really shown me, at least, this whole incident showed me the real ugliness and nastiness of the left. And I really want to talk about that right now and just give you some concrete examples. So for one thing, we've seen last week at the hearings, at the confirmation itself, so at the vote on Saturday, there were over 1,000 protesters at the National Mall with signs and raging up against the senators, basically harassing them as they were coming in to vote, trying to cross police lines. I think they arrested something like 169 protesters on Saturday alone. And even while Kavanaugh was being sworn in after the vote, people were crossing police barriers and trying to get into the Supreme Court chamber, yelling and screaming to get in and actually heckle this small swearing-in ceremony. You had a Georgetown University professor put this long tweet last week, and on her blog she wrote this whole thing about how all the Republican male senators who oversaw this process should be killed, their bodies should be castrated and fed to swine. She said this. A Georgetown University professor came out and publicly said something this disgusting and nasty. In addition to that, you had doxing. You had a Democratic intern who doxed Lindsey Graham, Mike Lee, Orrin Hatch, and, basically leaking their private information, like where they live, online, on like Wikipedia and on Twitter and other places, so that people could go and actually harass them at home. I got even more for you. Ted Cruz and his wife were harassed at a restaurant a few weeks ago over this. Basically, trying to enjoy a dinner between the two of them. And what happens? A whole cavalcade, over a dozen leftist protesters come in, surround their table, start screaming at them, won't let them leave, won't let them get up. The restaurant is telling them to get out. I'm told that the restaurant, or I read that the restaurant owners have gotten death threats for housing Cruz and his wife for dinner. This is completely hysterical. I mean, this is something out of Weimar, Germany. And here's another example. Cory Gardner, Republican senator from Colorado, his wife got a text of a beheading after he voted to confirm Kavanaugh. He shared this with the media. This is like unbelievable stuff. And, you even got places like Facebook, which is, of course, a complete leftist echo chamber, despite their attempts to be to sort of do damage control and hire more conservatives and all that. There was an executive, a Facebook executive, by the name of Joel Kaplan, who's a conservative, and he actually is like 20-year-long best friends with Judge Kavanaugh. And he went to Kavanaugh's hearings. He sat behind him and he listened to the whole hearing, that emotional testimony that Kavanaugh was giving and Ford were giving. He was there. He was caught on tape, sitting in the front. And he was proud to be there for his friend. And what happens? Facebook employees, leftists, complaining, screaming, hollering, and making all these protests on their internal chat about how this is a betrayal of their culture and it's a slap in the face of their values. And you've got people like Sheryl Sandberg saying, you shouldn't have gone out there. It's his decision, but I wouldn't have gone out there given the culture of our company. The culture of your company? What does believing somebody with no evidence and standing by someone you think was wrongfully accused have to do with the culture of your company? Unless your company is a political shill, unless it's something that's not objective, unless it's tribal, unless it's based on believing women, no matter who they are, as long as it advances your political agenda. I mean, this is ugly stuff. It's going to get uglier. The Democrats are literally trying to out-Weimar Germany. I mean, they are like this close to having their own paramilitary organizations going around the country. I mean, if there's anything like that, isn't Antifa kind of like that? These hooded, black ski mask wearing people who go with mace and baseball bats at its speaker events and try to derail it. I mean, this is really disgusting. It's really atrocious. And I think that, like I said, I am not a conservative, but I would be ashamed to call myself a Democrat today. I think that they have fully embraced identity politics to the point where somebody's going to get hurt. There was a poll that came out earlier this summer saying that 1/3 of likely voters believe that there will be a second civil war in this country in the next 5 years. 1/3 of likely voters. That's huge. And of those people who were polled, 59% believed that it would be the opponents of Donald Trump, the left, who would start this civil war, because they would resort to violence when they didn't get their way politically. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. This has to be put down with the fiercest words. If there are decent people on the left, and I know there are, I know people who consider themselves on the left. I mean, look at this walk away movement. I mean, this is something the media has tried really hard to bury. I run a meetup group. We have people who come to my meetup group every week, and we discuss ideas. And I've had people who disagree with me vehemently on many things. They would have disagreed with me on 75% of what I said in this video, and they're ashamed to call themselves Democrats because of what's going on. They have decided to walk away. And I think that, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I'm hoping the better elements on the left do come out of this and reassert their control, but only time will tell. I think, we'll have to keep an eye on the midterms. We'll have to keep an eye on, what the arguments are. But, this is something that really needs to be watched. And I think that it can't get further than this without, somebody getting hurt. So I would say, I'm getting a little heated myself here. So I think at the end of the day, the important takeaway here is, ideas speak stronger than fists. They always have. You can punch someone in the nose, you can kill them, you can lock them up. That's horrible. You'll stop that person, from doing things. But their ideas will survive. Ideas, as they say, are bulletproof. And they are the real legacy of future political action. If you really want to change the culture, you should do what I'm doing right now. You should be speaking with people, debating with them, using your words. I mean, isn't this what we tell every 3-year-old in this country when they start shouting and throwing food and doing things? Use your words. So I implore everybody watching this, anyone you interact with, use your words, use reason, use logic, and don't join some tribal faction and think that going out and throwing your body into a throng of protesters, getting yourself arrested, making death threats, sending lurid beheadings to wives of senators, don't think that this is helping your cause. It actually undercuts you. It undercuts you to most people in this country who are, I think, in the middle. So, don't do it. I hope I don't have to talk about this again. I hope it doesn't come out to be even worse than it is now. I hope, as Susan Collins said in her speech, we have reached rock bottom and we can only go up from here. But I am not that optimistic. I'm pretty optimistic generally, but not on that issue. So that's all I have to say for today. I hope you enjoyed this program. Check me out on Twitter. You can check me out on Patreon. You can check me out on my blog. Links will be given for all those things in the video description. And be on the lookout for my public debate on Me Too. So with that, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, Rob here. Did you like what you saw? If you're really interested and want to see more, click the link below and check out my YouTube channel to see full episodes of the One in the Many videocast. Thanks. Hope to see you later. Bye.